Hello everyone. Hello, especially to my professor Ricardo Armienta. My name is Brandon Ivan Gaytan Gonzalez, and today I'm going to be presenting you my financial analysis of Anandams Manufacturing Company. So, the goal of this case was to evaluate Anandam's financial health and decide whether the company qualifies for a 50 million rupee loan. So, let's dive in. So first, we start with our cash flow statement. So as we can appreciate, in 2012 to 2013 period, Anandam had a solid operating cash flow with no major investments or financing. This could be because of the startup of the company, maybe. But from 2013 onwards, things changed a little bit. Operating cash dropped due to huge increases in receivables and inventory. The company had to rely heavily on debt and equity to fund fixed assets purchases. But by 2014 to 2015, despite generating over $18,000 in operating cash flow, Anandam invested $34,000 in fixed assets, financed with more than $25,000 in debt and equity. So, the result of this was that they only had $93 in actual cash left at year end. In short, Anandam is growing fast, but is doing by peeling on debt and stretching its working capital. The operating model is profitable, but the liquidity is extremely weak. The company is asset rich but cash poor, and that's a red flag, especially from a lender's point of view. Next, we saw Uh, I mean, I did the common size analysis, the vertical analysis for both income statement and balance sheet. So here in the income statement, we can we can see that over the 3 years period, we spot some strong points and some few warning signs for the company. Starting with revenue, okay? The company has maintained a steady sales structured by 90% of total sales come from credit while all while the other 10% only comes in cash across all 3 years. This consistency shows a clear reliance on credit sales, which ties directly to the cash flow issues we saw earlier. Gross margin has held up pretty well, 38% in 2012 to 2013 period, peaking at 41% in 2013 to 2014 period, and then stabilizing at 40% in 2014 to 2015. That tells us that Anandam controlled its costs and goods sold effectively. So Anandam is growing, but the cost of that growth is hitting its profitability hard, really hard. The company needs to improve efficiency and manage its costs better if it wants to keep margins healthy and sustainable. Now for our balance sheet. Looking at it, we can see how the company's assets base and capital structures have shifted as it's grown in 2012 to 2013. The company was heavily invested in fixed assets, which made up 74.22% of total assets. But by 2014 to 2015, that number dropped by 51.33%, mainly because current assets, specifically inventory and receivables, grew a lot faster. Inventory increased from just 12.5% of assets to 24.57%, and accounts receivable jumped from 11.72% to 22.94%. That tells me that Anandams is trying up a large portion of its capital in working capital, which directly affects liquidity and cash flow. So the balance sheet reflects rapidly expansion, but also increasing in risk. Working capital is consuming a big chunk of resources, and the company's funding is shifting towards debt and payables. So to stay financially healthy, Anandam needs to free up cash and reduce its dependence on external financing. Now for our trend analysis. So looking at Anandam's income statement through a horizontal analysis, it's clear that the company experienced explosive growth across all key metrics between 2012 and 2000 to 2015 period. Total sales quadrupled over the 3 years, increasing by 300% by $31,235 in 2012 to 2013 period to a astonishing $124,000 in 2014 to 2015 period. Both cash and credit sales grew at the same pace, which shows that Anandam maintained its revenue structure while scaling up fast. The revenue growth of Anandam's company is impressive, but it's starting to feel the weight on its own expansion. Unless it finds a way to control expenses, especially administrative costs and interests, its profitability will continue to lag behind its top line growth. So now our horizontal balance sheet analysis tells us that the company is expanding at full speed and maybe a little too fast for comfort. From 2012 to 2015, total assets grew by 250%, going from 39,000, almost $40,000 to $142,000, almost $143,000. Most of that growth came from aggressive investment in fixed assets, which increased by 147%, and a huge buildup in working capital, especially account receivables and inventory. So Anandam's balance sheet reflects a company that's expanding rapidly but dangerously. Receivables, inventory, and short-term liabilities are all growing way faster than revenue or profit, and the lack of liquidity puts the entire structure, the company, at risk. If Anandams doesn't manage this growth more carefully, it could face serious financial pressure, even with strong sales. So, company needs to take a look on that. Next, we have our ratios. As we can appreciate in these 18 ratios, financial ratios, I can conclude that in the liquidity ratios, the company is severely weak because, as we can see in our quick ratio, we have 0.79, far below the industry benchmark. Okay, in efficiency, we are worse because receivable days are 94 versus industry days that are 52 days in average, and inventory days are 169 versus 75 days. This is way, way too much. Now, for a leverage is high. Debt to equity is 1.25 versus 0.35 average. Way too high. Profitability is mixed. Okay, so our return of equity is a solid at 21.67%, but the net margin is low, and our return of assets is slightly below average. Our asset utilization is inefficient across the board. These numbers paint us a clear picture. Anandam's business model is working. but its financial management is not. So, if I were the bank, would I approve the loan? My answer would be not the full 50 million. The company, because the company's liquidity is too low, efficiency is weak, and debt levels are risky. However, Anandam does show strong potential. So I would recommend a partial loan, maybe half of it, 25 million rupees. But this needs to be conditional on improving working capital, increasing assets turnover, and submitting regular financial reporting. So my final answer for this would be not the full amount at this time until the company improves their financial health overall. So finally, my financial recommendations for the company would be basically that they tighten receivable collection and optimize inventory. They need to pause new fixed asset investments until cash flow improves. Build a real liquidity buffer. Cash needs to be protected. And also, very important, bring in a CFO or financial controller to track KPIs monthly. And finally, track working capital and cash flow as top priority moving forward. So to wrap this up, Anandam is a high growth company with strong sales and a working business model. But unless it manages its cash working capital and debt better, it's headed for trouble, probably bankruptcy. So, okay, that was it. That's all. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor, for letting me perform this case. It was very helpful, very intuitive, and this would help me a lot for future works. Thank you.